the greatest woman of all time, Claressa Shields.
Make sure y'all stay on point with the Puncher's Point. What is good, y'all? Welcome back to the Puncher's Point. Claressa Shields has done it again. And I mean, honestly, whenever Claressa Shields is fighting and I usually come back and I do these post-fight episodes, I'm not really shocked that she won. But regardless, Claressa Shields runs boxing, and Claressa Shields is still the undisputed women's heavyweight champion, defeating Franchon Crews-Dezurn by unanimous decision. Now, overall, it was a good fight. I know a lot of people online are saying that they wish she got the knockout, but regardless, it was an overall beautiful performance from Claressa Shields. Now, before I get into the strategy and the breakdown and all those types of things, I had the fight graded 8-2 in favor of Claressa Shields. I think that Franchon Crews won the first round slightly, and then I gave Franchon Crews the 9th round. But regardless of all that, Claressa Shields dominated throughout the entire fight. I mean, she looked like she was ready to go from round 1 all the way to round 10. And honestly, it looked like she could go another 10 rounds at that. But with all of that being said, let's kick into this episode. We're going to be talking about the strategy. We're going to be talking about the key moments in this fight. We're going to talk about what's next for Claressa Shields, because it gets pretty interesting. And it seems like Claressa Shields is going to be leaving the heavyweight division pretty soon. We're going to talk about that later on in this episode. But with all of that being said, let's go to the strategy grade. Now, as far as strategy, I'm not going to lie to you. I got to give the strategy a 7. When one fighter has a great performance and the other fighter has a lackluster performance, usually when those combine, I got to give it a 7. I got to put it right down the middle. But what did Claressa Shields do so great? What did Claressa Shields do efficiently to get this win? Well, as far as the keys to victory that I had for Claressa Shields, they were pretty similar as far as what she did in that ring. First thing I would say is counter her with hooks. And she did a very good job of not necessarily countering with hooks, but using those hooks as a form of attack. You see, she didn't really counter with the hooks, but she did a great job of setting up for those hooks, starting with the jab and then going to the hooks, or just throwing consecutive hooks at a time. My favorite combo in this fight from Claressa Shields was the jab left hook. She would throw the jab and then she would throw the left hook right after. And it was a combo that surprised me, not because she can't do it, because I've seen in previous fights, I've seen her use that combo. But again, we're always talking about her right hand, and we're always talking about how dominant her right hand is. But she was starting off with that right hand. And this is what I like about Claressa Shields. She started off with that right hand, and then as the fight progressed, she started establishing that left hook. And that left hook was the more dominant punch this entire fight, which surprised me a little bit because, again, her being an orthodox fighter, you would think that, just like in a lot of her fights, that the right hand would be the one that was going to carry the most weight. But the left hook that was landing, and I like the way that she was throwing it, whether it was consecutive hooks where she would throw a left hook and a right hook, or whether she would throw the right hook first and then her left hook. But what I liked about how she set it up was the majority of the time she set up that punch, it would be a jab followed by a hook. Sometimes she would go to the body and come up with the hook. She was very versatile at how she would land and throw that hook. The second key to victory I had for her is basically tag her with jabs and straights, which she did this entire fight. I mean, the jab was working very well for Claressa Shields, and then she would follow up with that right hand straight. And the thing about that right straight was, even though the majority of the time her favorite punch in this fight was the left hook, she didn't shy away from that right straight. She kept on firing it. She kept on using it. And that's what I liked about Claressa Shields, that she was extremely versatile. She said that she showed her offense, her defense, her versatility, showed her endurance, all those types of things. And I couldn't agree more, because Claressa Shields went in there and Franchon Crews, it looked like she didn't know what was going to hit her. Franchon Crews tried, and we got to give her a lot of credit. But Claressa Shields was just on her P's and Q's, and she was able to go in there and dominate Franchon Crews. She was able to use previous weaknesses that Franchon Crews had in their previous fights and pick them up and put them into this fight. She was able to generate a new game plan to keep Franchon Crews on her feet. And the last key victory that I had for Claressa Shields was target the body on inside exchanges. And I thought she did a very good job of targeting that body when Franchon Crews-Dezurn would come forward. There were a lot of times where Franchon Crews would try to throw that jab and try to set up some attacks. And whenever she would do that, Claressa Shields would just interrupt that exchange, and she would just clip her into the body and she would stop it right away. I think Claressa Shields did a very good job of neutralizing Franchon Crews-Dezurn's game plan, but at the same time, I also think she did a very good job of neutralizing the jab and using a bunch of these versatile attacks to stop Franchon Crews-Dezurn. Franchon Crews-Dezurn, she tried. And I mean, we can go back to the first round when they were just guns blazing. And I thought Franchon Crews did a great job of that. However, the problem was, as the fight progresses, Claressa Shields, she got the endurance and she got the stamina to go all 10 rounds. And if you can't keep up with her, there's going to be a problem. Franchon Crews could not keep up with Claressa Shields. And then once Claressa Shields realized that she could land the right, and once she realized that Franchon Crews was going to be alert for that, she started establishing that left hook. She started establishing the jab. She started going to the body a lot more once she realized that she could tire her. And from round 1 to round 10, Claressa Shields was the aggressor. She put the pressure on Franchon Crews-Dezurn, and she really had her in deep waters. Now, as far as the keys to victory that I had for Franchon Crews, first one was use feints to create openings. And I think she tried. Using that, but I think the problem was I love the jab. It's the most important punch in boxing, but I think in this fight, she threw that jab a little too much. See, once Claressa Shields started throwing after the jab, once she really started moving around that jab, I wanted to see Franchon Crews-Dezurn start off with some lead punches, some power punches, and she didn't do that. It seemed like Franchon Crews-Dezurn was so focused on the jab that she didn't really have any chance to throw any other punch. And I feel like in this fight, if she would have just used that jab as a feint instead of just throwing it straight forward, I feel like Franchon Crews-Dezurn would have had a better opportunity of landing some punches on Claressa Shields. Using her movement around the ring, that was something that I didn't really see from Franchon Crews-Dezurn. There weren't a lot of times where you see Franchon Crews-Dezurn move. The only time you really saw her move was when Claressa Shields would be on the attack and she would roll her shoulder a little bit or try to get out of harm's way, but she wasn't doing what I wanted her to do, which was move around the ring. I wanted her to do a little bit of what Lainey Daniels did, just not as conservative. I wanted to see her stick and move. I wanted to see her move around that ring and frustrate Claressa Shields. I wanted her to force Claressa Shields to second guess and to basically kind of try to figure out a little bit more. But it seems like once the third round came, it seemed like Claressa Shields knew what she was doing. And then last but not least, limit the right hand. That is one thing that I'm going to be honest with you. I wouldn't say that she was limiting the right hand, but I would say that she was definitely focused on it. And the problem was, if you cannot limit that right hand on Claressa Shields, then she's going to have a field day with you. And when she didn't limit the right hand, Claressa Shields even argued, or she basically countered that key to victory that I had by using that left as the favorable punch. But in my opinion, I truly believe that Franchon Crews could have did a better job of neutralizing that right hand and forcing Claressa Shields to fight a different way. But that left hand, I mean, it was clicking on all cylinders. And it's just another tool in the box for Claressa Shields. It's another thing that next time a Claressa Shields fight comes, I would have to reconsider. So overall, I think Claressa Shields just had a perfect game plan. I think Franchon Crews tried her best. I think that the endurance and the stamina was getting to her. And I think once round 6, round 7 came along, I think Franchon Crews was just looking to survive. So overall, I mean, Claressa Shields had a great game plan. Franchon Crews, she couldn't keep up. But at the same time, Franchon Crews could have also did a better job at trying to land some better attacks. I thought she did a decent job with head movement. I thought in the early rounds, Franchon Crews-Dezurn did a good job of pushing Claressa Shields back. It just didn't last that long. So as far as strategy, I got to give it a 7 out of 10. Now, the excitement in this fight, not going to lie, this wasn't a decent fight. I give it a 7.5. The first round was super exciting. I mean, in the first 10 seconds, maybe even less, these two just went guns blazing, just went punch for punch. And it looked like Franchon Crews-Dezurn, in my opinion, was getting the better of those exchanges. And as the fight progressed, it was exciting to see how Claressa Shields would dominate. But at the same time, it wasn't an all-time classic, as you would say. Again, Franchon Crews, she wasn't in this fight. So, again, I always say when you have one person controlling the fight, when you have one person putting the pressure on, it makes it really difficult for me to view it as an exciting fight. In order for it to be an exciting fight, an all-time classic, both fighters got to be in the game. Whether it's a chess match, whether it's just both fighters going punch for punch, both fighters have to be in the fight. And in my opinion, Franchon Crews wasn't in this fight. So as far as excitement, I got to give it a 7.5. But for the moments that Claressa Shields had, she made it an exciting fight. Claressa Shields, she didn't let her foot off the gas, which I thought would also keep you on your toes. And at the same time, I feel like that is what carried the majority of the excitement, the entertainment throughout this fight. Now, stakes. What are the stakes on the line? Well, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I give the stakes an 8. And the reason why I give the stakes an 8 because you have the Undisputed Heavyweight Championship on the line. You have the history between both of these women. I mean, you go to what happened after the weigh-in, which, I mean, honestly, it was absolutely disgraceful how both teams got into the fights and how that whole altercation happened. Claressa Shields even said it after the fight in the post-fight interview. She said, if I can go back in time and not push Franchon Crews-Dezurn, I wouldn't do it because I didn't think it would lead to that. And I mean, I got to give Claressa Shields a lot of credit for owning up to her mistakes. But at the same time, there was a lot of drama in this fight. You know, there was a lot of history in between the two. I obviously talked about how Claressa Shields is a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, but in order to get to those Olympics, she had to beat Franchon Crews-Dezurn. So Crews-Dezurn was a 2-time Olympic alternative. I mentioned that. So they had the history, they had the drama, and I feel like that is what kind of raised the stakes a little bit in this fight opposed to her previous fights at heavyweight. I feel like because these two had the history, I feel like it made for a good fight. Plus, not only that, but both of these fighters got the personality as well. So I think that this fight got a decent amount of coverage as it was progressing, as it was getting closer. I feel like obviously, despite how disgraceful the fight was after the weigh-in, I feel like that also generated the buzz as well for this fight. So as far as stakes, I got to give it an 8. You got the Undisputed Heavyweight Championship on the line. You got somebody like Franchon Crews-Dezurn, who was undisputed at super middleweight. So overall, I mean, stakes were on the line. It adds to Claressa Shields' resume. It adds to Franchon Cruz' resume, and it just adds to the accolades that Claressa Shields has. It adds to all of the championship fighters that she's beaten. So as far as stakes, I got to give it an 8. And then last but not least, impact. I'm not going to lie to you. The impact of this fight, I give it a 7. And I'm going to tell you guys why. The reason why I give it a 7 is because the heavyweight division, Claressa Shields has been defeating challenger after challenger after challenger. Before this fight would have happened, I said the one fighter that I would have liked to see her go into the ring against, at least at heavyweight, was Shea Canali. But after seeing that absolute beautiful knockout from Danielle Perkins, shout out to Danielle Perkins on that clean knockout that she had. It could be a candidate for knockout of the year. But after that knockout, obviously, I wouldn't want to see Shea Canali versus Claressa Shields. Even if that was the case, it's kind of too far back. So there's really not a lot of things that are awaiting for Claressa Shields at heavyweight. And I think she even knows that because if you go back to the post-fight interview, she was calling out a lot of the fighters in the lower divisions. And we're going to talk about the fighters that she called out. And we're going to talk about the fights that I would prefer to see her fight. But regardless, in the heavyweight division, there's really not much more room for Claressa Shields to move. She's already beaten Vanessa LePage. She's already beaten Danielle Perkins, Lainey Daniels, and now Franchon Crews-Dezurn. I mean, unless a certain someone wants to move up to heavyweight, I really can't see much from Claressa Shields at this point. And I don't think that there's a lot waiting for her at heavyweight. So as far as the impact of this fight, I got to give it a 7. I really don't think there's a lot waiting for her. The only reason why I put the impact at that high is because we know that she's the heavyweight queen. And at the same time, there's still potential for people to move up and challenge her. But I don't think it's going to happen. And so when we go to the overall fight grade, the overall fight grade for this fight is going to be a 7.38. Again, it's not going to make the top 10 on season 8. It's not going to make the top 10 on the year as far as the grades for the Puncher's Point. However, I do think 7.38 is a fair place to put this. I think when you talk about the strategy of both fighters combined, not just one, because if we were just going on Claressa Shields, I'd give it a 10. But we're going on both fighters combined. I think 7 is a fair place to put it. It was a decent fight. You know, I enjoyed watching it. It wasn't an all-time classic, so I'm not going to put it in the 8s range or the 9s range. So 7.5 is fair. I do think that the stakes are fair. Again, when you have the Undisputed Heavyweight Championship on the line, when it's undisputed, you got to put an 8. You could argue that the stakes could make it higher. You know, I could have put it at an 8.5, considering the history that they got, but I'm going to keep it at an 8. And then, obviously, the impact, not much is going to happen here on in the heavyweight division unless somebody comes up. So 7.38, I think it is fair. I think you could argue it could be a little bit higher, but regardless, I don't think it would be high enough to make the top 10. And now the fun part. What is next for Claressa Shields? Well, here's the thing. In the post-fight interview, she called out Michaela Mayer. She called out Shadeja Green. She mentioned going down to 168, maybe challenging for Franchon's belts. Now, what would I rather see from Claressa Shields? Well, I'm not going to lie to you guys. Her and Michaela Mayer seems like a great fight. You know, if Claressa Shields can go from the heavyweight division all the way down to around the 163 range, 160 range. I would like to see that fight with her and Michaela Mayer. And truth be told, I think that would be a good fight. Michaela Mayer, she's been in women's boxing for a very long time. You know, she's fought some great fighters of her own. She's got a decorated record as well. She's fought some of the best. She's fought Alicia Baumgartner. She's fought women like Sandy Ryan. I believe she's fought Terry Harper as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. But Michaela Mayer's got a good resume. And I feel like when we're looking at Michaela Mayer now, I feel like she's got a lot of hype around her. I feel like this fight could definitely happen. A lot of people are saying Shadasia Green because Shadasia Green is higher in weight. And again, I always say styles make fights. So I'm not going to go off of the aspect of Crews-Dezurn defeated Shadasia Green. Therefore, Claressa Shields should be able to defeat Shadasia Green. I'm not going to go off of that logic. Would I like to see that fight happen? Sure. I think it'll be interesting to get most valuable promotions in that, considering that they've worked with Shadasia Green. I believe Shadasia Green is also signed to them as well. So seeing that fight happen, it would be an interesting fight, but I would really like to see her and Michaela Mayer. I don't want to see her and Franchon Crews-Dezurn 3. I really don't. Both of these women have fought so many times in the amateurs, professionally. How many times are we going to keep seeing this fight? You know, I do believe that if you continue to fight the same opponent, in some way it might ruin your legacy. Not completely, but it hinders it a little bit. So in my opinion, I want to see her go after Michaela Mayer. If she doesn't go after Michaela Mayer, Shadasia Green is a good fight. As far as Shea Canali, you know, maybe I'd like to see that fight down the line. But after that knockout, I really don't have a lot of interest in it right now. But I would say the number one fighter for her to fight is Michaela Mayer if she can make that weight. Obviously, there was a lot of buzz about Alicia Baumgartner versus Claressa Shields. Again, I still think the weight is too far off for both of those fighters to fight. I really do believe that. I believe that the weight that it's going to take for Alicia Baumgartner to get to 160 versus Claressa Shields to get to 160, I just think that the weight is going to be a problem for that fight to happen. But Michaela Mayer versus Claressa Shields would be a great fight. I would like to see that fight happen. I think it adds to Claressa Shields' resume. I think it creates a big fight for women's boxing for a lot of fans to tune into. And I think we're entitled to that big fight. So that would be the biggest fight I would like to see for Claressa Shields next. But regardless of all of that, shout out to Claressa Shields on retaining her undisputed heavyweight championships. As far as Franchon Crews-Dezurn, look, I give her a lot of respect. She went in there, she challenged for those heavyweight belts, she lost. She's still the super middleweight champion, so I'd like to see her continue her run over there. And overall, you know, she got to keep her head up. It goes back to the drawing board, but shout out to both of these fighters. They put up a great fight, and I'm hoping to see some great things out of them in the near time future. Now, with all of that being said, you guys know what time it is. It's time for us to log off. Again, make sure y'all continue to tune into the Puncher's Point. We'll keep on dropping banger after banger after banger. I just released a post-fight episode for Ryan Garcia defeating Mario Barrios, so make sure y'all go check that out. Also, make sure y'all go check out the preview episode for Claressa Shields versus Franchon Crews-Dezurn. Let me know how I did. But overall, with all of that being said, continue to tune into the Puncher's Point. Continue to tune into the podcast platforms and the social media platforms as well. We're going to have a bunch of great content coming on there as well. So make sure y'all continue to tune into the Puncher's Point. And last but not least, make sure y'all continue to stay on point with the Puncher's Point.